Great. Hey guys, welcome. I'm Dr. Beverly Wright, and this is a session about navigating a data science career. I want to start by thanking our sponsor, Luminous Strategy, and in particular, Keith, who's going to give us a quick introduction, and then we'll kick off the session. We're going to go about 45-ish minutes on the panel, and we want to allow for plenty of Q&A time, so you'll have an opportunity for that. But we'll cover the rules in just a hot second. But Keith, I'll let you do a quick intro. Is that a Luminous sign behind you?
It is.
Oh, so you're actually in the office. Very fancy.
Yeah, I am today.
Awesome.
Social distancing. Yes, I am.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, great. Thank you, Beverly. And I'm Keith Pegues, the CEO and founder of Luminous Strategy. And we're really excited to sponsor this event today. You know, data science is really important and really valuable. I was looking at some data from McKinsey, and in light of kind of where we are in the country and the world right now, I found this pretty interesting that big data initiatives account for about $300 to $450 billion in reduced healthcare spending, or could account for that amount of reduced costs. And roughly $3.1 trillion would be the estimated cost of bad data in healthcare in the US. That was pretty striking. So the impact of data science and data scientists is really significant, not only in healthcare, but in lots of other spaces. And so we're excited to just support this effort, and particularly excited that there are as many students as there are who are on board with this event today and really taking a serious look and exploring data science as a career. So again, we're happy to be a sponsor and looking forward to hearing from these great experts today.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. All the budding future talent. So fresh, undamaged. That's great.
We can fix that, though.
We'll damage them, you know. Surely that'll happen quickly. No, but we're super excited to bring this very experienced panel to you guys about how to navigate a data science career. A couple of ground rules. We have Nicolas Vasiloglou, whom I work with at Relational AI, and he has skipped his workout to be with us and help with the platform. We tried to get a platform called AnyMeets, and I'm hoping to do that on our next Beverly Wright kind of event. So it looks like a really cool platform. But yeah, he skipped his, what is it called? Social fitness? Your social fitness workout you skipped today, Nick. Yeah, so thank you for doing that.
Socialfitness.ai.
Yeah, I need to get back on that. I did a couple of sessions, but that was very fun. So he was talking about some of the ground rules. So tell me, Nick, if I'm missing anything. It probably works best. I think you're automatically muted. So if you see if you don't see a mute or unmute, that's why. I think you're automatically muted. When we get to the Q&A, I believe we're going to remove that automatic mute, unmute. Is that right, Nick?
No, if they want to speak, you know, they have to raise their hand, and I will give them access to speak. Yeah.
Okay, so when we get past the initial questions, we have a set of structured questions. When we get past those, we'll open for Q&A, and we'll turn off the recording during the Q&A. Then you guys can ask questions in the Q&A chat, and we'll take hand raises if you want to ask things verbally. I do have a couple of rules when we get to questions, but I'll talk about those when we get to it. Okay? Awesome. So again, with the vacuuming, can you guys hear that? Okay, good.
We're all good.
So we'll go ahead and get started. Our introductions, we're gonna, on our agenda, we're gonna have introductions. We're gonna talk a little bit about the context of why we're so excited about a career in data science. And then we'll have some structured panel questions, some Q&A. And I sort of like to leave you with, you know, not just like, okay, go away, but I wanna leave you with something tangible. You know, I want, if you're thirsty for knowledge, I wanna give you more of that. So there's a little bit of a learn more and give back opportunity before we go into the closing remarks. So very quickly, fun. Uh, so real quickly, here's a few quotes that I grabbed about data science as a field. The excitement in data science is in the journey toward achieving 3 significant kinds of results: discovery, insights, and innovation. And that's by Kirk Bourne. Many of you know Kirk. I like this one. Data science is the future. It's better to be on the cutting edge than left behind. And this is by, I think he's a French ambassador or something. So anyway, look him up. And then Matthew Mayo, being able to obtain, process, and build models out of data, which will ultimately be used for their predictive capabilities, is incredibly exciting. I agree with that. I see data science as almost a sleuthing kind of thing, as a detective. You know, you're finding things in data that are not easily found. So that ability to gain real deep insights out of what is seemingly just a bunch of numbers or images or whatever the data inputs are is incredibly exciting to me. So that's why we're all pumped over this. Okay, so some quick introductions. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves. I'm Dr. Beverly Wright. I'm a senior data science consultant for a major brand, which I just started this new role. I'm not allowed to say which company it is because I'm sort of in stealth mode, but it is a special project that I'm very excited about. I have other affiliations. I'm the operating officer for a nonprofit called Athletics, and many of the people on the call are also a part of Athletics, which is a way of using data science for good. I'm also the academic director for University of Georgia's data science programs, and I run a podcast for Technology Association of Georgia called Tag Data Talk. Okay, Scott, you want to go next? Tell us why you're so cool.
Oh, I couldn't do that. I'd be fibbing. But what I can say is I'm Scott Clendaniel. I started in the field shortly after the Earth cooled and the dinosaurs stopped roaming, and currently data science for Legmation, which is an asset management company in Baltimore, Maryland, soon to be owned by Franklin Templeton.
All right, Julie, you want to go next? Or Tony, either way.
I can go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, great. Hi, guys. I'm Dr. Tony Huang. I am the director of machine learning at AudioEye. Basically, I'm the head of AI and ML at the company. Started my career off in the hard sciences. Have a PhD in computational biophysics, where I did like computational modeling of chemical systems using supercomputers and clusters. And then I moved on to specializing in computer vision, both traditional and deep learning. A bunch of my projects have been patented. One of them, the Los Alamos National Laboratory, is interested in using one of my computer vision projects for the International Space Station. So right now it's being vetted through the process.
Awesome. Julie.
Julie Grantier. Been working in the field like Scott since before we had the words data science linked together. Been in consulting for years. My most recent foray was building out a data science department for a drum agency marketing firm until this week anyway. And working on helping clients make the most of their marketing data. I ran everything end to end from consumer research, data architecture, data science, digital operations. And I delivery analytics. I have my mug where we do data science for good.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to start with the first question. around your data science journey. So I've met each of these incredible professionals in different ways. And I noticed that they have some remarkably different journeys behind them. So I want to talk through, kind of what those look like. Admittedly, mine is probably most like Scott's. So I'll go first, and then I'll ask you, Scott, to talk about your journey. And so you'll see that, we have some businessy, we have some sciencey, we have some computery kind of starts, and they all end up, in data science. So it's an interesting and intriguing movement. So I'll start. So I've been in data science, again, since 29 years. Back then it was, I don't know what we called it. Decision sciences was my undergraduate major. I still think it should be called data arts and sciences, but whatever. So I started in 91, and I was building a model for Atlanta Gaslight, eventually Southern Company, which was used in the cost of service study. Well, it actually was the cost of service study, which I eventually had to testify to the Public Service Commission and that sort of thing. And I discovered that data science could be used in marketing. And I was really intrigued with that particular application of data science. So that's why my degree is marketing science and my master's is analytical methods. So I didn't do everything like logically necessarily. There's this like plan, you go from here to here and it ends up going like this. Have y'all seen that graphic? So that's kind of my journey. But it was all planned, sort of. I went into academia. And so a lot of people don't know this, but I'm going to give y'all a little secret. I went into academia so that I could stay home with my children during the day and teach in the evenings without having to get, because I was against daycares from day one. So when I started having kids, I started teaching decision sciences, and I was like, wow, this is great. But the applied side of me kept me grounded on wanting to actually do data science work. So as part of that, I rewarded my poor students by requiring that they use real data to solve real problems, with real clients. And I started doing that in 2000. And it turns out that's called experiential learning. I didn't know that was a thing until about 10 years later. But anyway, so through that, I ended up running hundreds of projects because I had so many students here and there that were doing that. On top of that, I also had a very interesting practitioner type of roles. So academia, I've taught at, I think, 5 different schools, undergraduate, master's, doctoral levels, and now executive education over 15 years. Practitioner-wise, I've been either an individual contributor or over a data science, different titles, but data science department. That was about 11 years. And then I've been in consulting, which I actually find to be, truthfully, one of the more rewarding, just because you get to see so many different types of problems and so many different types of contexts. So the three-legged stool of experience has sort of what's brought me to where I am today, and now it's interesting to see how much it's evolved and the type of changes in our data and the way we do things. So that's my journey. Scott, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. I actually started in March of 1986, and I came up for an interview, and I was all excited. It was an interview for Citicorp back in the day, and I had been a management and strategic planning major. So I sat down for the interview, and I'm all nervous. Get through the interview, that seems to go relatively well. And the interviewer stops and says, most of your background seems to be in management and strategic planning. Why are you interested in a position in analytics? Well, unfortunately, the person who arranged the interview neglected to tell me that the role was for analytics. So I was like, well, analytics is really important because it measures the success of the organization, and completely sputtered, but I was able to get the position. And so that's how I ended up in analytics. So it gave me sort of a different perspective. I was mostly in financial services up through 1999, where I was VP of Consumer Lending for Bank of Hawaii. And then I had a family emergency that caused me to move from Hawaii back to Baltimore. And all of the financial services companies in Baltimore for credit card lending, which is what I specialized in, had left. So I'm thinking desperately, what am I going to do for a job? And I was like, spent a lot of time doing that artificial intelligence stuff. I wonder if anyone might be interested in that. And it's hard to believe now, but back in the day, organizations were extremely reluctant to do anything with predictive analytics and predictive modeling. So it was really a hard sell. But I did that for a better part of 16 years. Then I was recruited by Morgan Stanley to leave consulting and become their first full-time data scientist, which I did. And then left to my current role at Legg Mason, where I'm basically trying to build the infrastructure for AI across the company. There you go.
Fantastic. I think we're going to probably get into it, but I want to talk about that reluctance. I think some of it stems from different places, but eventually let's
Absolutely.
see if we can weave that in. Okay, Julie, would you tell us about your data science journey, please, ma'am?
Okay. So mine started in physics, to work in laser. And so in that case, I was modeling physical systems and statistical mechanics and actually using some regression models to try to find contaminants, which was not very common at that time. I was very thankful. I took a little German. I could read the journal in German in the Georgia Tech physics library. From that, I went into teaching and had a lot of interest in how people learn to solve physics problems. Really sorry, I know it's super hard. And that was actually my focus. And I moved over to work with cognitive psychologists and developed more expertise in research and then statistics on the soft of science. So psychology and marketing and optimization. I taught at Georgia for a few years and went into software development and what I called statistical consulting, data science, not a thing. Did research on helping these determine design expense or how to do survey, so optimize, maximizing, minimizing costs, things like that. Did some work, government, telecom, data packet stuff, all the way to water. Work practically every industry. And more recently, a little ago, marketing specifically, build up a data program.
Julie?
Yes.
Can you turn off your camera when you're talking? Because is it just me, or is she coming in weak?
I'm getting feed in and out.
Yeah. If you could do your that might help just during the time that you're talking. And then we would love to see your pretty face when you come back. But when you're talking, we might have to do that. Okay, you were saying about where did you leave off?
Oh, went to go to drum marketing. So I was looking out a data program there. And it's been a real journey to be in an agency and be full time, and ended up to run from end to everything from research to data architecture.
I would suggest that Julie joins through
web
phone.
implementation. And
Julie,
do.
I don't know if you can hear us. If Julie can hear us, I think it would be better to join by phone because your connection is kind of choppy. So I think if you
I agree.
disconnect audio and then rejoin through phone, and you can still have your camera.
Yeah, keep your camera here and mute this one, and then call in by phone to get your audio.
Yeah. It says switch to phone audio. That's what you should do. If you go to your mic, there's an option that says switch to phone audio.
Thank you. All right. So we'll come back to you, Julie. But when I met Julie, I thought it was interesting that she came from the sciences and squishy stuff, where you're still kind of using data to solve problems, but now she's doing it in a very different way. And her most recent position was in the marketing world for Drum Agency, which is where I actually used to work too, which is kind of funny. The Atlanta community is relatively small. So very cool application, especially given where she came from. Tony, do you want to go next, sir?
Yeah. Hi guys, Dr. Tony Wong here. So my journey in data science actually started off in the hard sciences. So I started off as a wet chemist. I have a BS, two BSs in chemistry and biochemistry. And then I realized that I really liked modeling, like computational modeling more. So I specialized in like computational chemistry for my master's. And then I went on to getting my PhD in computational biophysics. During my journey of transitioning from like being a wet scientist, as they call it, or a bench scientist, to a like a computational modeler, I got involved in a lot of startups. So I was in Techstars, Blackstone, the National Science Foundation's Innovation Corp, ATDC at Georgia Tech, which is the Advanced Technology Development Center, and Y Combinator. And what I learned from that is, being able to be adaptive to the changing needs of industries. So as I was transitioning from being a bench scientist to a data scientist, I actually won the Blackstone Launchpad, which was like a business competition. And because I won that with my big data company at the time, they hired me on as a advisor and coach for other big data startups. So they taught me the tricks of the trade, and I was able to help grow over 20 different Blackstone Launchpad portfolio big data companies from conception to final product release. So I was like heavily involved in like team building, customer discovery, product market fit, etc. And then, I then switched over to going into like full on like data scientists, like in the sciences. So, there's like, I did computational modeling and quantum mechanics for a couple years, moved on to molecular dynamics for a couple years, and then transitioned over to the financial market, where I was chief scientific officer for a big data company. And then now my current job is the director of machine learning at AudioEye, where we take a lot of like the AI ML products or software out there, and we try to make the web accessible for people with disabilities. So it takes a lot of the stuff that I learned in my past, like computer vision, machine learning, data science, and apply it to something useful, which is getting people with disabilities on the internet and giving them that independence. So that's where I'm at right now, and I'm pretty excited of how I've grown into this position.
Fantastic. I think it's really interesting, especially that while Tony has a very technical background and he's really heavily relying on data science for innovation. I think that's a big focus for you, Tony, that he's also intrigued with the storytelling aspect of it. And he don't have to show us right now, but he's got like a green screen, and he has studied Walt Disney, and he understands like the storytelling and the hero's journey and how to apply that to the data science world. So it's interesting to see. I actually think that the softer sides of data science are actually the more difficult, and that the technical are a little bit more, I don't know, I don't want to say easy, but not as dynamic. So very cool.
The hard skills like programming are easier to teach, but the soft skills like storytelling, which is a big part of data science, which is taking the numbers and explain to somebody who doesn't know what these numbers mean, is like a very, very difficult topic.
Yeah, I think I've always found the arts more difficult too, so maybe that's part of it, but fantastic. Okay, so next question is, what do you guys see? Because the listeners are, and part of the reason we decided to do this session is we had so many people ask us individually, even like during this time when you have hopefully more, a little more ability to learn, tell us about the skills, like what can I be doing right now? So we're going to cover the skills of the future in a hot second, but let me check in with Julie. Are you back, ma'am?
Technical difficulty as usual. Ask for a meeting password in addition to a meeting ID, and I haven't quite put that out on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, but it's still kind of jarbly. So I guess we'll come back to you in a sec. Do you got my,
yes,
did
definitely.
you get my meeting ID and all that kind of stuff for the call in? I sent it to you on text.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we'll move forward with the skills of the future. So what would you guys say you would consider the skills of the future? I kind of have, my ideas about what it might be, but I want to hear from you guys first, and then I can sort of round off the conversation with what I'm hearing from the market. But what would you see as, like, there's obviously been a total transformation with the type of data that we're dealing with. How can people equip themselves for tomorrow?
Well, I can go first. Should I just go first, or Scott, do you want to go first?
No, we're not.
Sure.
It's anybody, whoever wants to jump in.
Oh, I'll go. So like the skills that I think are important or there's like, I guess, different degrees of importance, right? There's like the bare bones basics, and then there's like super important stuff. Bare bones basics, you should know some basic programming skills, like be it either like Python, R, SAS. You should know statistics. You should know like a little bit of machine learning. You should know how to do data visualization. But most importantly, you need to know like the data intuition, which grows over time, which basically means like, you can tell whether or not this is like garbage or if this is important or not. But all of that is just like the foundation. But what I think the most important thing is that programming itself isn't really that important, which is kind of strange for me to say. It's not that important because people back in the day, they used to spend like hours or like weeks building out these like really, really large 100,000 line, 200,000 lines codes. And they take a lot of pride in having their code go from like R&D into production. But the world now is changing where you actually need to know how to use APIs and pre-built like platforms, open source platforms, or open source code. So like the skill that I would recommend knowing is taking like APIs or like pre-made solutions and gluing them together with like some very minor programming to get your objectives, taken care of. And this still requires a very technical mind to know how to do this, because you need to be able to piece all these like parts together. But that's a general trend I'm seeing, is that people need to know, like they need to understand and know how to use APIs and pre-made solutions to get off the ground fast. Because like speed right now is king. Your competitors are like going crazy. They're spending a lot of money. They want to get the product out to market. They want to be able to capture that market quickly. And so speed is king. You can't spend a lot of time and a lot of energy building your own custom code, even though it feels good to do it. Getting it out to market is definitely the general trend, and that there's specific things that you need to do in order to get that out to the market, which is like knowing how to use APIs, knowing how to use pre-made code.
Yeah, this is Scott.
That's interesting to hear you say that. So yeah, go ahead, Scott. I'll bounce off of that in a second.
Absolutely. And Dr. Wright and I have probably talked about this from time to time, so I don't want to steal her thunder. So I'm going to focus on something a little bit different, which is everyone needs to be aware that there is a huge lurking problem under the rug at the moment that is likely to come out. And the solution for that, I think, is going to be an area to really focus on for skills of the future. The problem is that I have seen at least 3 studies come out in the past 12 months that indicate that 85% of all models never reach production. So that means that 15% success rate is sort of the benchmark for now. That can't continue. There are all sorts of issues that are involved in that. But a lot of it comes down to some basic project management and some planning, meaning you have to understand what are the conditions for the model that I create to be implemented? What platform are they going to be on? How's it going to be measured? How often am I going to update it? How often am I going to change it? How closely have I integrated my solution into what the final production environment is going to be? That element is not terribly sexy. It's not necessarily what a lot of people think of on the front end, but there is a huge disconnect between what is the organizational problem I'm trying to solve, modeling, and then how it gets implemented. If I am just sitting in my cubicle building a model that no one can use, I might as well just be sitting there playing Tetris on the screen because it's going to have the same net impact to the organization. So I think one of the big components that's going to be extremely important is making sure that there's a much clearer implementation path, for the model, or you're going to end up with some severe problems. So that's my 2 cents.
Interesting. Okay, so what we've heard so far, and welcome back, Julie. I hope your audio is behaving. And by the way, during the pilot, during the testing, everything was great. Of course, that's how it always goes.
Of course.
But we've heard, this is kind of controversial to say that programming is not huge, because some people believe that programming is huge. Like, you got to be able to program. I actually agree with you, Tony, that I see it actually kind of coming down. But we've heard about programming. We've heard about velocity / speed of getting models done. The dynamic, it was not directly said, but sort of the dynamic nature of modeling and making them fluid and robust. And then, Scott, you mentioned the POC graveyard, which you're correct. There's no way that can continue to happen. We can't, I mean, what business can make it on, every time I do something, 15% it works, right? 15% chance it's going to work. Like, that's not sustainable. Anyway, what other skills would you say? And Julie, did you want to give us any more on your background before I ask you about the skills of the future? I want to make sure you're
I think I covered it.
Okay,
yeah, I think
cool.
I got caught up.
Yeah.
For
Any
what
other
you could
thoughts?
hear.
Yeah. No, this is much better. Your audio is awesome right now.
That's great. So I think sort of more the data science career, the softer side of it is what I was thinking of, which is flexibility and continuing ed. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow in data science. None of us know what's going to happen in a few months in data science. I think all of us need to be, particularly young people, but even at my age, to continue learning every day, whether it is a new language, a new platform, new techniques, taking advantage of your community, your meetups, Coursera, LinkedIn, whatever we can do. We need to not get attached to whatever tools we're using. I think so often we find the way that we do things, and then a client comes to us and we say, oh, I've got these 3 tools in my pouch, and these are the tools. Everything looks like a nail if you have a hammer. And we need more flexibility to try to really be willing to reach out there and say, I'm not sure that what I have is the best thing. Let me research and see if there's something else. Is there some other model? Can I talk to someone else? Right. I mean, we can't be attached to the tools that what worked 6 weeks ago may not be what works in the future. So I think that as data scientists is very important.
I wanted to add on to what Julie just said. There was a great quote that I think reflects exactly the point that Julie's trying to make. Famous statistician named George Box, who had once said, statisticians, like artists, have the great fault of the tendency of falling in love with their models. Meaning that if you only know one type of approach and you fall in love with that, and that's always your go-to, it's not going to help you. If you have a team of folks who needs to build a house, it doesn't matter how great your electric screwdriver is if you're trying to solve boards. It's not going to work. You need to have a much broader set of tools available to you. You need to be able to test different things, and you need to be able to continually learn. So I'm 100% fine with Julie said.
Yeah, and the continuous learning, I think, is certainly a newer kind of concept. I know that I get former students that come to me all the time, or even current students or people that just got out of school, and they'll say, okay, what now? You know, thinking like, I'm done. I got all my education out of the way. And I say, okay, no, what are you going to do next? And that's a tough thing to do. You know, it's tough at my career level. It's tough at your career level if you're newer in this market, because you think like, I'm done, but you can't. It's hard to be done when you're dealing with a field that's incredibly dynamic. So some of the other things I'd heard were the flexibility, especially in the tool. Like, you need to become tool agnostic, I think is what I'm hearing you say, Julie. And I could not agree more. That's an incredible statement. Also, the community itself, like, I think we've been a little, I don't want to use the word shy, but to ourselves maybe. And in some ways, that's the nature of data scientists. We tend to not walk out of our comfort zone a whole lot. But to build that community, I think is important. And one thing that I'll add, I think, yeah, two things that I'll add that I think were implied but not directly said is you need to have not just an expansive toolkit, but I think an expansive technique, you know, expansive techniques. And Scott, you were implying that by, you know, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I've known people that would know one technique. Like, I knew this guy, he was great. I worked with him at a company that was very large, and he was really successful. He knew one technique. He knew how to do logit modeling really well, and that was it. So everything that he did, he had to, you know, he had to work backwards by taking the problem and turning it into a logit solvable problem. But that's not going to really cut it in the future. This is part of the reason why we probably have an 85% POC graveyard. So anyway, I would say expanding your technique, becoming more flexible in that. And the second thing I'll add to the list, this is a great list, is deliberate culture shifts. So I think we've been a bit, I don't know, lazy maybe, about like, oh, well, if we start doing stuff, the culture will shift. No, probably not. I mean, it might some, but you have to have some sort of plan or some sort of, it needs to be deliberate. You need to have a strategy around, how am I going to deliberately influence a data inspired culture, you know? So I think we're seeing that as well. Any other thoughts on skills of the future? I do think that soft is going to override some of the hard on the skills as things become more automated and systems become more sort of, you know, almost black boxy in a sense. But are there any other thoughts behind the skills of the future before we move to our next discussion point?
This is Scott. I just wanted to add that Dr. Wright's familiar because she was very kind to help me get an appointment doing a presentation many months ago. And that is something to be really aware of, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes,
if you're making, yeah, if you're going to make any sort of career choice, career decision, career move, be aware that no matter what you may think or how cool an organization is or how neat you think the project they're working on is, if you don't feel like you're a culture fit, you're setting yourself up for failure, because it is almost impossible to produce great results in an adversarial culture. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I love that. Any other final thoughts on the skills of the future? Are we heading in the right direction? Do we need to pivot? Are we totally missing the mark? What do you guys think?
I think the in terms of like skills that you probably need, I'm seeing a huge growth in the deep learning field. I don't know if that's within everybody's wheelhouse or not, because it requires more of a comp sci approach. But yeah, if you're looking at like a really hot field, you know, the data science itself is like a really hot, like, general field. And then within data science, there's like machine learning, which is hot. And then within machine learning, there's deep learning, which is like really, really hot. And deep learning requires like skill sets that are more comp sci. So you'll need to know like how to do like neural nets, know how to like handle unstructured data. But I do know like a lot of companies right now are hiring a ton of deep learning engineers, but they're classifying them as machine learning engineers. So learning the traditional sets of skill sets of a machine learning engineer, like scikit-learn, PyTorch, those are like the big modules that every machine learning engineer should know. Will get you started in that general trend or general track.
Very cool. Oops, let's see if I can, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys for something that you may not give people very often. I have 29 years of experience. Scott, you have like 30 something years of experience. Julie, I know you're 20 plus. Tony, I know you're at least 10. And we all have sort of these like secrets that have led to what we consider to be a somewhat successful data science career. I'll go first and I will share my secret. For those of you who have less experience than us combined, which is like 80 years altogether. Maybe you have some other secrets, but here's, here's a handful of little nuggets for you to think about for your career. I would say that I've got a couple of things that I've had supervisors over the years tell me, there's this thing that you're really good at, and I think that's going to help you, and it has helped you. And I would say that my number one, sort of thing or skill that has been my secret weapon is curiosity. My curiosity is ridiculous. I mean, it's sometimes, especially early in my career, it's sort of gotten me in trouble because I would want to, when I was at CFI Group, as an example, this is Klaus Fresnel's company, or it used to be, and I can't get my lighting correct here. There we go. There we go. Okay, Klaus Fresnel's company, and they run the American Customer Satisfaction Index, and we would build these PLS models, which were lit. I mean, it was super fun, very exciting, and for me, this was early in my career. Okay, so forgive me, but I wanted to build a brick house. I wanted to build like just an awesome model, and we had proprietary software that Jay Chaw created. Like he's at Chick-fil-A now, really cool guy. And so I would run and iterate and improve. This is before machine learning, so I was basically doing like manual machine learning. Like, how do I improve the diagnostics? What can I modify? How do I, get this just right? And sometimes I wouldn't want to stop. I would just like almost analysis paralysis. What if I augment this way? What if I modify what if I transform this part of it? What if I mean, just what if, and I kept running and running and running. But eventually I learned to sort of harness that into a way that I'm still not just having fun, because that was my main objective back then, but have fun, but still answer the business question. So I've created like a fat arrow toward generating and exploring and sort of itching that curiosity, or scratching that curiosity itch, while at the same time answering the business question. And I think that curiosity was a secret weapon for me. I've tried to teach curiosity over my 15 years, and guess what? You really can't. You can encourage it, you can influence it, you can bring it out in people, but I can't teach people a systematic methodology for being curious. Like, it has to be, you have to be into it. So I'd say that's my secret weapon. What about the rest of you guys?
This is Scott again. Feature engineering in many cases is going to completely outweigh which algorithm you select. Now, there are cases where that is not true. For example, if you're dealing with computer vision or computer audio, your selection of algorithm is really important. The problem is that vendors and people in the media love to talk about algorithms. Because that's sort of the bright shiny object and it's exciting, and feature engineering is generally considered to be, it's sort of drudgery, and I'm just going to create a Python pipeline and use the same one every time, and that's going to fix everything. One, not true. Two, it's really important. And unfortunately, There is a lot less talked about that than there should be, in my humble opinion. But there is actually a theory from the folks who originally created classification regression trees a gazillion years ago, which is called the multiplicity of good models, which is a fancy way of saying if you get the feature engineering correct, a large number of algorithms will solve your problem. If you don't have the feature engineering correct, then maybe one particular algorithm is going to try and save you, but it's still tough. So I actually love feature engineering, and I didn't in the beginning. And the reason why I fell in love with it isn't because it's exciting and sexy. It's because it actually solves the problem better than a lot of other things. So there you go.
Cool. Other thoughts around your secret weapons that you want to share?
I'll
This is
tell,
Julie.
or unless
Okay.
Julie wants to go. Julie, you want to go, or should I go?
Sure. I'll go ahead and go. I guess I focus on the softer things because I think that they're helpful. I think that one of mine is to listen. So much we do have to remember we're solving business problems because we love the data and we can crawl into the data and stay there all day long. But our goal is to solve those problems. And a lot of time our clients, if you're working in consulting or, even if you have internal clients, they don't necessarily know what their questions are. I mean, they've thought through, hey, I want to make more money. Hey, I want to spend less, but that may be as far as it's gotten. Taking the time to sit down with the client, understand business from end to end, sort of, okay, let me look at all the factors that could go into this. Not discounting the intelligence of subject matter experts in those fields, because just sitting and listening for a couple of hours to a potential client about every way their business runs, you can see things and see data sources or data points that you would never have thought to bring in. And I think that makes a huge difference. I know in Athletics, we've discovered that as we've worked with trying to have panels of subject matter experts for all of our projects. And you really learn so much more. And there's little things that you wouldn't have thought about if you're just singularly focused on the data. So I think that that's huge.
That's great. And I've used the term, and I think I've heard other people use it, like Priyanka Jain wrote a book about BADIR, and it's a problem framing. There's a ton of stuff about problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
How do you solve Ishikawa diagrams, all the 5 whys and all this stuff, but there's not a lot on problem framing. And Julie, that's a fantastic point. And another reason why I think we have the POC graveyard is we're not taking the time all the time to really frame and understand the business problem before we say, like, just give me the data, let me go after it. Have y'all ever said that? I know there's 88 people on the phone right now, but I bet you some of you have said, just give me the data, let me go after it, or at least thought that. So it's hard to sometimes take a minute and wait a beat before you jump in to really understand that problem that you're trying to solve and frame it in a way that is attackable. That's a great secret.
Right. I mean, I think often there are 2 or 3 variables that you're optimizing for. But if there's something else out there you haven't thought of, you end up, oh, great, we've got great profits, but we've eliminated all of our customers. Or, so, we've turned everybody off, every marketing, things like that. So without looking at that beginning part, the things end up in the graveyard for sure.
And then Tony, I think you were going to say something a minute ago. Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can go into detail with, I can go into a couple of minutes talking about secrets. So, if you really want to be successful in data science, you have to know like the general things, like know how to use SQL, know how to use like one of the programming languages, etc., whatever. But I think a lot of things that people kind of miss out on in understanding what a data scientist does is they're data wranglers. So they take a huge amount of data and then they clean it up and present it in a way to people that that make decisions for the company, and they need to present it in such a way where it's understandable. So having like business acumen is very important. Understanding like your industry, understanding like who you're talking to is very important. Having really good communication skills is really, really important, because you can drive or pivot the company based on the way that you communicate. So you need to be very clear, very confident in translating your insights on the data to other team members. You'll have like team members who don't know anything about numbers. So being able to storytell is really important. So again, like Beverly talked about storytelling. I'm a huge storyteller. I'll tell you about my background. So I was in startups, and you only had like 2 or 3 minutes to wow a judge or wow an investor. Typically you have the first 30 seconds. If you don't wow them, like your ass is grass. Like I've seen people like get kicked off stage within 30 seconds of pitching because they didn't get to the point fast. They weren't clear. And so I took a lot of the stuff that I learned in the startup world, and I honed it. So I'm a very good storyteller. I make PowerPoint slides. They're called decks a lot. And what I found was like, when you make these decks to present to investors, stakeholders, that a video explains the story faster and better than an image. And so I got really into videography. I have like this like mic set up here, which you see. I also have like some other crazy things, like, I have like a teleprompter. This is a 60-40 split teleprompter, because I love to storytell. And also like, I actually have a green screen that folds up. So, I'm like messing up these the shades.
Tony also has a portable fog machine front. No, I'm just kidding. But he's a very good storyteller.
Yeah. So storytelling is very, very important. There's a couple ways that you can probably get started in storytelling. The Hero's Journey by Disney is a great starting point. That usually starts off with like the hero. They leave their home. They're usually given like a secret weapon, and then there's like a climax where there's like a conflict, and then they return home, which is called returning to the start point. So basically it's like a circle. That's a very typical startup story, which I think you guys should like learn. And also, if you're able to storytell, this is very important. If you're able to storytell, you can either persuade your boss or persuade other team members to either side with you or side with another topic. So, or another entity. So basically you can pivot, you can make the company pivot wherever direction you want based on your storytelling skills. And that's very, very important. So that's like the soft skill side. My other secret for like the hard skill side is like, figuring out how to use like pre-made solutions like AWS, some other hard skill secrets, looking at some open source code if you don't want to spend your time like rewriting code, looking at like Git repos, looking at Stack Overflow. Another secret is don't be prideful on your custom code. Again, this goes back to the other topic where it's like, don't be prideful that your code's not going to go into prod. Just make sure that you take the shortest route to your goal. And I think all of the stuff that I've said has really helped me propel in my field.
Awesome. So to summarize some of the secret weapons we talked about, curiosity, listening skills, problem framing, fantastic communication, and leveraging open source, like be a part of the community. Don't just take too, make sure you give as well. So one last thing is when we talk about like soft skills, because there's a lot of talk about soft skills, even among, highly technical professionals that we have on this panel. What do we mean? We talked about storytelling and communication. Are there other types of soft skills? I mean, one that I'll throw out there, and you guys can add or modify or whatever you want to do, but one that I might throw out there is the ability to connect. And in particular, I see sort of a pipeline between IT, data science, analytics, and the business. And you got to be able to have the soft skill to, and in many ways, I think it's an EQ sort of thing, but you got to be able to connect to these different groups, and not just, that doesn't mean just talking to them. That means like empathize, like have an understanding of sort of what they're going through. Are there other types of soft skills that we haven't covered that we should address what that means?
I'm going to unabashedly steal from Julie's great point, which is the fact that regardless of how much we tell ourselves otherwise, all data science problems are people problems, meaning that if there isn't a person who has an issue and a person whose needs that need to be met, it doesn't matter what the data says. So you really need to understand and work with people, understand what really motivates them, what's really causing the pain points for them, what's really going to solve the problem for them. If you don't understand that, you're going to spend a lot of time spinning your wheels. So the communication skills, the empathy skills, and I think that, by the way, to everybody else, I'm sure Dr. Tony is similar, but Dr. Wright and Julie are really masters at that. So go check out their stuff because they do a really excellent job in terms of those identifying what those people issues are. If you don't understand the people issues, the data's not going to matter.
That's a great quote. If you don't understand the people issues, the data's not going to matter. I love that.
In adding just words to some of those issues, I think patience and teaching come in as soft skills. Not everybody knows about data. Your clients may not even know what data is. You say, well, give me your data, and I don't know what I have. I don't know what would be helpful for you. Being able to, and we're anxious to get started. Let's get the project moving. But taking the time to educate them on what would be helpful and taking the time to, like I said, listen, but being patient is key.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the education part too. At my, not my current, but one company ago, I started an academy of sorts it was teaching the rest of the company about what is data science so that we could better identify opportunities. So these were like project managers and other types of people that were in the company, just so that as they're out with clients doing whatever, they would be able to identify it. So it's that teaching and identifying and recognizing different business opportunities. But yeah, that's a great point. These are all great. Okay, so real quick, final piece of advice. So let's say you only had, one thing that you could tell a budding new data scientist. What final piece of advice would you give someone who's trying to perfect their data science journey? I'll go first. I would say don't lose your love for it. Don't lose your love for remember what it is that why you went into this. For me, it was discoveries. Like, I love making discoveries. It's always been about discoveries. I think it will always be about discoveries, and that I'm never going to get bored of. So don't lose your love and your, the big arrow as to why you went into this. And in a way, I'm kind of telling you to have fun with it as well. So that would be my final piece of advice when thinking about how you can have a successful data science journey.
I'd throw out that a lot of people are in a big hurry to say that this is most important, or that is most important, or this other thing is most important. And I always think of a three-legged stool. If you pull any of the legs off the stool, you're going to fall down. So you need to be willing to understand the technical stuff at some level. You need to be able to understand the people and the communication stuff at some level, and you need to be able to understand the science at some level. All of those things are important. I think probably if you don't understand the people problems, the data doesn't matter is probably my biggest piece of advice. But it's not like you can do that without data or without algorithms, right? You need to have a little bit of everything.
Have a balance, I guess, is what you're saying too. Like, don't think it's all technical, or don't think
Right.
it's all soft, or don't think it's all about one. There's no silver bullet. Like, you need to have a balance. I love that. Okay.
And it can be frustrating. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I'm like, geez, do I really have to be able to understand every little piece of the advanced math? No, but I need to know a lot of it. Do I need to know everything about people? No, but I need to know a lot of it. Do I need to know every algorithm? You need to have a pretty wide bench, but.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Scott. Tony, what's your final piece of advice? Yeah.
Julie, you want to go? It looks like you were going to answer.
No, go ahead.
Okay. My final piece of advice is look at trends, and that's very important. So data science evolved, right? So it wasn't called data science a couple of years ago.
Right.
It actually started off as, as statisticians. So if you wanted a job in data science a couple of years ago, you had to be a statistician. Now, like the new hot buzzword is data science and machine learning, all that stuff. But the skill sets are still the same. It's just like been evolved into a different word. So I'd say take a look at the market, take a look at what people want to see, and then just start adding your skills to it, like certain skills to get that. So like for instance, if you are a traditional statistician and you're a data scientist right now, look at the market. Right now, I'll give you a hint. Machine learning is like going to grow. So, what I would recommend is getting some skills in machine learning to go and pivot into that market so that you can like improve your or advance your career. But again, that goes back into like just taking a look at trends right now.
Love
does
it.
that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no. So stay abreast of where the market is going and where the industry is moving. So that's fantastic. Okay, Julie, what final piece of advice would you give?
I would say believe in yourself. You know more than you think you do. You don't know everything, and we've talked about so many things you need to learn and staying up to date on everything, but you do know a lot. And whether you're going into an interview or talking to a new client, believe in yourself. You've worked at this hard and a long time, and you have more skills than you think.
Yeah, it can be a bit overwhelming, I'll admit. Like, I think when I hear mentees talk to me, I feel sort of bad because I think they feel that they have to know everything, right? That they're not going to be useful unless they know every single thing, every programming language. Like, what do I do? What do I do? How many programming languages do I need to know? And how well do I need to know them? It's take a deep breath, prioritize. You probably know more than what you think you might know. And a lot of your skills are most likely useful. So that's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
And when we're hiring, we're looking for people who know how to learn and are willing to learn.
Right. And that's probably more important than what do you know right this moment, but what can you know, or what can you learn, or are you open to that sort of thing? So we'll take Q&A now. Like, Nick, are you on? How are we going to do this?
I'm on. I think most of the Q&As have been answered on the chat.
Oh, okay. So can we take verbal Q&A?
Well, yes. Well, if we have to do something like that, people will have to raise their hand so I can give them access to talk.
Okay. We had a couple that I'll go ahead and read while you're doing that, if you don't mind.
Tell me the name of the person and I will, yeah.
No, I'll go ahead with this one. And then if you want to give the raise hand option, and we can stop recording too, by the way, because some people may not want their questions recorded. But one of the questions was, what do you see as any of the panelists, if you want to grab that one, how important is the skill of data engineering for data science?
I think it's a lot more important than people want to admit. It's huge.
Yes, I would agree.
Is it like a necessary evil? Is that what we're saying?
Well, I think at least being familiar, because you need to be secure in where your data is coming from. You need to understand how it was put together. We can work all day on data, but unless it's good data, and you need to, even if you're getting it from someone else, even if you have a team of engineers, you need to be able to walk back and understand the SQL code that it was pulled from or something like that. So I do think it's important.
Okay. I think it's, I agree with the importance, and I think most importantly is it's frustrating, and I think we admit that it's frustrating. Like we're not afraid to talk about the unpleasantries of having to become data janitors, but the reality oftentimes is that we spend a great deal of time and energy being that data janitor. So it's a reality. What do you guys think? Okay, What other questions do we have? Someone want to raise their hand and ask directly? I tried to get a lot of them in the chat answer, but I'm sure I missed several.
Well, the rest of the panelists have actually asked that.
Okay.
I actually responded to them. That's what I mean.
Oh, okay. Any other questions before I give you some resources? Higher education. Okay. So what do you guys think about, but now I'm not quite sure exactly what the question means, but what do you think about all the university programs that are coming out now? Because almost all schools now have, or all major schools now have a master's in some sort of data science, machine learning, analytics, you know, something like that. And then many have built doctoral programs, and then a handful have actually seeped down into the undergraduate level. So what are your thoughts on some of the university programs that are coming out in data science?
I have an opinion. So based on what I'm seeing, a lot of companies can't wait 4 to 6 years for somebody to graduate with a bachelor's in statistics or a master's in applied statistics or whatever. So they're actually sourcing into boot camps now. So like, you know, for instance, Georgia Tech's like data science boot camp or full stack boot camps, like that kind of thing. They, the amount of data that is out in the world greatly exceeds the amount of people who can actually analyze it, right? So so these companies can't wait like 4 to 6 years to grab new graduates. So they're in line waiting for like these 6 to 12 month boot camps that are, you know, that pump out these new data scientists. So
Yeah.
I feel like the biggest bang for your buck is probably going through like a 6-month accelerator or 12-month boot camp if you want to start in your data science journey.
I'm big on the certificate and certification as well. I have the CAP at the end of my name is the Certified Analytics Professional offered by Informs, which I actually happen to serve on the board now as Analytics Certification Chair. But I'm big on being able to make yourself stand out, because degrees are great, don't get me wrong, but you can, just about everybody can get a degree. I feel like the certificate and the certifications are really making a mark and providing that level of differentiation. What other thoughts from the panelists would you guys have around the schools? Any other comments before we move to the next question?
I think evaluating the university to make sure you're doing that experiential learning, to make sure that they're giving you real data. I mean, just taking classes on statistics are super important. Taught them for years, love them. But making sure that you have real data and the university is focused on getting you internships, getting you in the community working with data right away if you do, you know, if you are pursuing a degree. And if not, take the classes, get your degree, and be sure you're doing something on the side. GitHub is huge when you're being hired. People want to know what you've done. They want to take a look at your code, your presentations.
Yeah, and someone asked a question related to that, which is, are there specific companies that are hosting boot camps? Just about, I mean, I don't want to promote anyone, especially because I'm at UGA, but UGA obviously does, Georgia Tech does. I'm pretty sure that they're everywhere. I think one thing that you could look at, I will point you to a resource. It's called The Analytics Buzz. And there's an interview by Polly. Her last name's Mitchell Guthrie. But if you put in The Analytics Buzz, Beverly Wright, Polly, P-O-L-L-Y. Polly Mitchell Guthrie's great person, fantastic experience. And she did a podcast interview about certificates and certifications. So that will give you a good primer on it. The gist of it is there's tool-based certifications that would just say like, I really know how to use this tool. There's technique-based certifications that say like, I really know deep learning, as an example. And then there are knowledge-based certifications like the CAP. So there's kind of 3 main classes of certifications, and it just sort of depends on where you are in your journey and where you're trying to get better. So you could take a look at that, so that we're not like giving away like, oh, you definitely got to go with this one. Related to that, someone had asked, is it better to hone in on a specific type of skill or be more of a generalist? Fantastic question. What do you guys think, panel?
It depends on the field you're going into. If you're going into data science, then having general skill sets is nice to have. The more specialized you go into, like for instance, like deep learning, the more specialized the skill sets. Like you're gonna have to know like neural nets, like convolutional recurrent neural nets. That's like a very specialized set of skills. So again, that just depends. Like, do you want to go into traditional data science? That's general. If you want to go into like machine learning or deep learning, that's more specialized.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think it definitely depends. And I wish I mean, there weren't enough opportunities back in 1991 when I started in this. I looked for a job called analyst and I was like all over it. But nowadays, there are so many opportunities. If I were to restart right this moment, I would probably specialize in a certain vertical. And I would probably, like, my favorite stuff is financial services. I love financial services data. I also love voice of client data. So if I could today, I would focus on that kind of data and that kind of vertical. You may actually want to focus in on like a technique, like Tony's saying, well, what if you just say, I'm the deep learning expert? So there are a lot more options for doing that today than there probably have ever been. There was a question about mentoring. I think I have about eight mentees right now. I can't do more than like 10. But I usually have, around 6-ish to 8 mentees at any given time. I always encourage people to try to find a mentor. And after you have about 5 years of experience, especially, then try to become a mentor. So what are your thoughts on the whole mentee-mentor relationship? Like, why is it important? What do you get from it? That sort of thing.
Hugely important. I'm a big advocate.
Important.
Yeah.
Oops. Julie, it's hard for us because we can't see your unmute. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, a huge advocate, obviously. I think there's nothing like one-on-one conversations with somebody to understand. I think we all also spend so much time trying to prove ourselves and look like we know what we're doing that we're afraid to say, I don't know what I'm doing. And having someone that you can say, I have no idea what I'm doing to, when you're starting out is huge. Having someone to reassure you and direct you is enormous.
Yeah. Scott, what were you going to say?
Okay, Scott, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that one of the things that I don't think people realize is when you are a mentor, you're not just helping someone else learn, you're helping yourself learn. So when you do mentoring, everybody wins. And so I'm a big advocate of becoming a mentor in the areas where you can help and add value as quickly as you can, because it forces you to learn different things and also existing things in different ways. It helps your communication skills, it helps your learning skills, it helps your technical skills. I'm all about it.
Yeah, I asked someone to be my mentor in a specific area because of their experience, and they were like, Dr. Wright, I can't be your mentor. Like, you know more than I do, but you gotta, there's even, there's a school in the area that's talking about doing a reverse mentorship where the high-level executives that have been in business 30 years are talking to recent grads. Everybody has something to share. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, you don't have to be like some big wig and that's now you can be a mentor. There's no like mentor club. Everybody kind of has something to share, and this is part of that community that we had talked about earlier. Tony, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, mentorships is very important. Finding a mentor who is not a fraud is very important. It's very hard for me to explain this, but I have to go back to my startup days. If you create like a big data startup, you have to find a mentor or an advisor to help you because you don't know what you're doing, right? If we're going to be kind of real.
Yeah.
so finding the right mentor is really important. And in the startup space, and I've had a very bad experience, and my friends have had bad experiences as well. If you find like the wrong mentor, oh my God, it is terrible.
Yeah.
So in the startup space out in San Francisco area, they have these fake mentors that or fake advisors that will come in and advise your startup. And what happens is like the startup will give like the mentor like a small piece of equity, but what they'll find out is that these mentors don't know anything. Like they're just like fluffing. And then when you ask them like these questions, they don't know how to answer it. And then basically you're stuck with this like person who adds no value to what you're doing. And then they take a piece of your equity from your company. And so, my 2 cents is, you gotta find a mentor, but you have to make sure like they are legit, like they know, like they come from like a legitimate background and not like, just scalping you or just being a fake mentor. I don't know how to describe it. It's very hard to describe it unless you've already been through a fake mentor.
I was going to say, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I think you may not, and so my number one kryptonite is I'm very naive. I just think everybody's a good person, and I take people for what they say and all that kind of stuff. So now y'all know that you can probably pull the wool over my eyes. Not a very good attribute for someone who's a professor, but I'm very naive, and sometimes it takes me a minute to assess someone, but I think it's the kind of thing that is very difficult to articulate to Tony's point, but over time you sort of you can tell the right sort of attributes that fit with you. That this person is legit and they're able to guide me in a proper way and that sort of thing. So it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is, but there are
it's very hard to have a bullshit meter. It's very hard to have a bullshit meter because when you're starting off, you don't have the intuition, and so you kind of like you're like relying on someone else to tell you it, and relying on someone that's just older than you isn't really a good indicator of knowledge.
Exactly.
So again, it's really hard. You basically have to vet them. You have to use referrals. Like you have to like kind of know somebody that's in the field and then like get a referral from them. That's the only thing I could possibly recommend.
I love that you guys are asking this question though, because you clearly see that there could be some value for you and it's an interest. Tom DePuna, if you're on right now, feel free to verbally ask your question, but I didn't quite understand it. And Nick, can he get unmuted? Tom DePuma. It was, let's see if you guys can.
You can talk now. Yeah.
Okay.
I have to do that. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, yes, you can. Good. All right, the winner of the raffle is a bobcat. So I believe that is Georgia College and State University, which is great because if we gave this to someone who's like a multimillionaire, I might have been sad, but you're a student, so hopefully you will enjoy this more. And his name is Spencer Cannon. Please tell me that you're on the line, Spencer Cannon. So Spencer, if you would like to email me, I'll put you probably saw it from the many emails that I sent out, but I'll put my email in the chat. If you'd like to email me, then we will arrange for your $100 from the raffle. Thanks to everyone for listening in. I hope you gathered a lot of value out of this, and huge thanks to Luminous Strategy, Keith in particular, for sponsoring and making this event possible. All right, have a great data set. Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.